No, you don't get to do either one. You snooze, you lose. Who were you with?
Test.
Testing.
So yeah.
Okay. All right, welcome to the March 5th, 2025 North Logan City Council meeting. We will excuse Mark tonight. He's out of town. We will start with a pledge led by Joni, after which Emily will give us a prayer.
Please join me as I say the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for the opportunity we have to gather as a city council to discuss city business and to have clear minds as we go in to make decisions for the benefit of the city as a whole. Please bless our first responders and anyone who is out traveling, that they can travel in safety. We say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
I'll give that to Emily and
Thank
second
you.
by Buzzy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll start by considering our February 19th, 2025 City Council minutes. I know that we've submitted some changes via email. Any other changes? If not, I would accept a motion to approve those.
I'll move to approve the minutes with the changes that were already outlined in the emails.
Okay.
Second.
So motion by Kenny and second by Emily. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and then we'll move on to recognition of an exemplary staff member tonight. That is Brent Red, who is nominated by Jordan Oldham. He said, I highly recommend Brent Red as an invaluable member of our staff. He is always willing to help, bringing dedication, professionalism, and a positive attitude to every task. Brent has a remarkable ability to diffuse tension with residents through his patience, fairness, and excellent communication skills, earning the trust and admiration of both colleagues and the community. A true team player, he consistently goes above and beyond to support our operations and ensure things run smoothly. His contributions make a meaningful impact every day, and we're fortunate to have him as part of our team. I'll add that he has the distinction of the North Logan City staff member that I see most often as I drive around town. So must mean he works the hardest. But join me in giving him a hand of applause. Okay, now we'll get reports from our public safety officials. I understand that Chief Thompson had a death in his family, so we have some substitutes here. Chief Goodrich, why don't you? He's acing out you guys. I'm sorry. I don't, or is your mic on?
There's a little thing on the bottom.
Oh,
There it goes. Okay, we'll try this again, a little better. So we are trying to do a data sheet to try to help visually present some of the numbers that we're working on. So this week we had 87 calls for service, and as you look up there, 14 of those were medicals. They were by far the largest amount that we had. And then it kind of breaks it down just in what we were seeing. Suspicious incidents, accidents were a big part of that, some attempt to locates and things. What we are seeing from last year at this time, the end of February, we're sitting at 822 calls. Right now, we're at 892. It's a difference of 70 calls. So our calls are going up. We're seeing that, and our traffic stops because of the calls, and because we're committed to that. We haven't seen as many. I did put a pie graph on here to show the stops. So last time when we talked, we were interested in knowing the citations versus the warning ratio. So we had 67 stops, and out of that, 19% of those were citations and 81 were warnings on that. And so we're going to try to do this to kind of give a good representation of what is actually happening out in the city with that. Other than that, our police commission meeting is tomorrow. We're presenting the budget there, and we've done a lot of work to try to collaborate and work with the different cities on that. So hopefully that goes good for us. But other than that, that's what we have right now.
thanks, Chief. Any questions for him?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, fire. It's all you guys.
I'm Chief Tompkinson, Logan Fire Department EMS Chief. Just here for Chief Thompson. Just for February call volume, we had 136 total unit responses. This was lower in February than January, and overall 2% lower call volume from January, but or for this year from last year. You got the reports. Was there any questions on the reports? No questions. That's all I got.
I don't think so. Thanks so much for coming tonight. Okay. Let's move on to review of strategic directives and action items. Alan?
Thanks, Mayor. Jumping down through some of these, I highlighted the ones that I'll probably touch on in blue. If there's questions on any other items, just let me know or stop me at any time. Website updates. Dylan is going through, he's an intern, redoing the website. He sent over a draft this week. So that has been completed. We're just going to go through and make edits on that and then send it out. Meaning there's still a lot of work to do, but it's really good to see the progress that he's put together. He's also working with the library right now to see if he should put together kind of a draft website for the library as well. That one's a little bit more difficult because of the numerous things that they have in an online portal for books on books and programming on that website, but he's going to give that a shot as well. This one right here, hear from the local mayor on long-term issues or issues involved in the county, the state, or obviously the legislative session right now. I know the mayor's been attending several meetings related to that. Staff has been attending meetings. I know that Mark and some of the other council members have attended some of the LPCs. I didn't know if there's anything specific, Mayor. Sorry, I'm putting this back in your court, but if there's anything to give an update on right now, considering the fact we have 3 or 4 more days of the legislative session.
Well, I guess it's probably public knowledge that we have to have a legislative resolution to dissolve the Justice Court. And so we got news late last night that was passed. Chris Wilson ran that. There's also a transportation utility fee bill that's going through that the ULCT has really been strongly opposed to. My understanding is that Representative Snyder really went to bat on behalf of the cities for some amendments that were really potentially harmful to cities. That got kicked to the Senate, and they're thinking it'll get kicked back down to the House of Representatives. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on that. But we're in good hands in terms of our communication with ULCT, and they have obviously a full staff that are following bills. So, but yeah, anyone's welcome to attend those LPC meetings. It's kind of a little late now because it's the last week of session, but anyway, yeah, those are kind of the main updates.
Thanks, Mayor. That's fantastic. One other quick update regarding that. We met with Hyde Park City this week. House Bill 368 has some implications regarding the building inspection department that are pretty burdensome to cities. They're taking a 14-day review period and shrinking it down to a 2-day review period, almost trying to nix review on every level, especially for homes that are somewhat similar to other homes. Meaning like you don't have to ever do a review on a home that's somewhat similar to another home. So the kind of implications of what they're doing might require us to look at repurposing some of the staff to look into that if we only have a 2-day window for review. So we're going to have to look into that. It's a more burdensome, I'd say, for Hyde Park City, who we contract to do our building inspection. But we'll look at that and I'll keep you up to date regarding those items.
What's their answer? This is the one question I've yet to have answered. So a 2-day review. So what happens when we get another house sliding down the mountain because we're not taking the time to do this properly?
I don't know if I'm fit to
Why are
answer
you
that
why are you
question.
asking Alan this?
I'm just
We've
wondering
asked
if
it a
you've ever
lot of
gotten an answer. It's not like I blame Alan for
No.
this, but it is truly one of those things where I feel like we bring this up all the time and it just feels like it's 100% falling on deaf ears.
And did you say it passed or it's still going through?
It will most likely pass in its current form.
Oh my gosh.
That's a 2 business day review, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, are they counting hours, like 48 hours from submission of?
I think it's different provisions though, like where if it's a 2-day review and then you have to identify everything that could be wrong in those plans in those 2 days, and then you can have further time to review, but you have to identify every potential issue within those plans.
So you're basically telling us that we're just going to say, well, we're not sure. We didn't have the time. So everything's wrong.
Or just mark everything as.
Yeah, that's what I would be
wrong.
doing.
I think it's particularly burdensome on cities that don't have a robust staff
Yeah.
that, it's Scott. Hopefully you didn't have any other plans for that day when they come in. So that's likely going to require us to rethink, workload and all of that. So.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
How many
Just a
lots do we
heads up.
have that are still left that would be an issue here?
How many what?
How many buildable lots do we have?
Buildable lots we have when we
Are you
reported
talking about
last
like
time.
approved?
I know that
Available. open
just
land.
still.
In the state, when we reported to the state, we had about 500 in North Logan City that were either entitled or in the building process. So,
Have fun, Scott.
yeah, and across the state, what was it, 110,000, 112,000 lots across the state of Utah? But there's no housing shortage. Sorry, there's no shortage of lots available to be built on. And so that's kind of the issue there. Jumping down through here though, if we go to newsletter, sorry to jump ahead, but newsletter, our printer or printing service that we use right now, will probably be going out of business or being absorbed in a couple months. Several cities use the same printing company. They're relatively inexpensive, and so we'll probably look into different options for our email delivery. Our newsletter delivery and all the different methods that we can deliver that. We want to just come up with some different ideas, so we're looking into everything. Debbie's doing a lot of work on that, so I'll keep you updated on that progress. Meetings, obviously, that's up to the mayor, council members for doing pre and post review of the council. That's very helpful. We've heard back from residents how amazingly helpful that is for keeping up to date on things that are happening in city council. And then also obviously the live YouTube link. We're the only city that does that in the valley. So that is fantastic to have the residents have that ability to watch every meeting live as it's taking place. We also post that. So there's a new post that goes out on social media before these meetings where people can just simply click on the link and go straight to the meeting. It's a little bit easier to get access there. A general plan, obviously, we'll have an update at the end of the meeting. We had endless public meetings and things that have taken place. General plan was adopted in the last meeting. However, that's just the start of things that need to take place to implement the plan. So that'll continue for several months to a year after this point to codify several items within that. Jumping down through city center, same vote. That was approved, but now it's just kind of the beginning of working through that process and implementing that, putting that into code, and also reaching out in the coming months to see interest in implementing that. The plans for that. Trails, we started on this. We've talked about canal trails with the county. We've talked about 16th East to remove past 19th North and the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. So Bonneville Shoreline Trail, we're still applying for different grants associated with that. 16th East and 19th North, we've started some process to put together some feasibility studies on those two roadways in North Logan City. And we'll see where that goes with the feasibility study. But we'll need those feasibility studies to apply for grants in the future in order to install the other sections of those trails. Jumping down through deer control, that's up to the chief. He's put together some plans. He's been working with the DNR regarding that. And in the coming months, you'll probably see that survey. I updated you last time, but we're working with Hyde Park now, and we'll probably put together a joint survey that'll go out in each of the communities regarding the ability to control the urban deer herd or the deer that do not migrate up and down into the mountain. Building a better understanding. We'll go over the budget tonight. I won't belabor this, but we'll talk about budgets. But in the coming weeks, we'll come with some different trends and discuss kind of where we're headed with some of our budgetary items. Feasibility study, we reached out to the county. They'll probably be starting on that. I reached out to them probably twice this week regarding different items regarding the feasibility study and also the canal trails, and they'll probably be getting back to us hopefully soon. And then the cemetery, Ryan's working really hard trying to put together plans to discuss the shed that's needed up there. We've had 3 more burials in the last week, so it's pretty intensive now. To put that in perspective, we used to average around 8 burials per year. 9 or 10 was a pretty substantial year. He's already up to, I think, 14 or 15 this year. And so it's a lot more intensive than it used to be in our cemetery. That's a very quick overview. If there's anything else, if you have any questions on anything specific.
I just have one question maybe for
Yeah.
the mayor with the county elections over, has there been any change in their thoughts around the rec center proposals?
You mean with new leadership? Yeah, so Sandy Goodliner's the chair, and then Catherine Buse is the vice chair, and we're starting on those meetings right now, like kind of the steering committee, because they've approved phase 1 of that, and I think they verbally on the record approved phase 2 as well. So I think it's happening. Obviously, there's a lot that can happen between them, but phase 1's a guarantee. It's happening. So. And then just so you know, simultaneously, Nibley had already started theirs with the same firm, and they've kind of expanded theirs to include at least gathering information from the southern half of the valley. So they're already well on their way on that front, and then we're just going to try and pick up on the north end.
Thanks. The news.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Any other questions for him? Okay, then we'll move on to our action items. We'll start with considering an approval of an application for a zoning map amendment rezone to upzone the current zoning classification of parcel ID 07-118-0005 at 2510 North 800 East from its current classification of RE1 to R120. Scott, do you want to give us the background on this?
Yep, so Alan's got the staff report. If you want to just hop down to, there's a map here. It shows the current zoning of the property. So again, on the corner of 2500 North and 8th East, this lot that is in question is a 1-acre lot. And the request is for it to go to R120, which would allow for 20,000 square foot lots. Both of those zones are considered single family residential. The staff report does provide a breakdown of what uses, whether permitted or conditionally permitted, are in each zone. They are very similar. There are very few differences in the permitted uses. The key difference here is just lot size from 1 acre minimum to 20,000 square foot minimum lot sizes. To the south of the subject property, you'll see R120 zoning, which will be consistent with what is being requested. To the west, you'll see R112, so quarter-acre zoning to the west and to the north. And then there's RE1 immediately to the north, but if you were to pan further to the north, there's more R112 in the North Park subdivision. So the zoning that is being requested is incremental to what is there now, consistent with what is to the south, and less dense than what is to the west. Alan, do you want to scroll down just a little bit down to the future land use map for the 2025 general plan? So this exhibit is the recently adopted future land use map in the general plan. And you'll see in the middle called out is the subject property, and it's located in what we're calling the residential core district 2. And in this this residential core district, the policies and the goals for this area is to have a moderate or slight uptick in density with opportunities for infill development where is logical and makes sense. There's an analysis in the staff report that goes through the policies and goals for this district. But does anybody have any questions as to the premise of what is being requested or have any questions for staff?
Maybe just to start, Scott, I know that this was heavily debated in Planning Commission. Can you kind of maybe summarize where they landed as far as recommendations or conditions on this?
Yep. So the Planning Commission, as they were reviewing this proposal, they wanted to understand what would be the potential impact to the surrounding neighborhood. This residential core 2 district does the policies and the goals for this area for new development, if it's infill, is that it be consistent with the design of the existing neighborhood as far as the style of the homes and the architectural materials so that it's consistent with what is there now. So it's a complementary infill type of a development that isn't drastically different from those existing neighborhoods that are there now. So the Planning Commission, as they were reviewing this, they did provide a unanimous positive recommendation, but they did have a condition that if the zone were to be approved, that it carry with it a development agreement with conditions for what a potential future home would look like on a subdivided property. So if the zone change were to be approved, it would allow for the applicant to request a subdivision of the property and create 2 20,000 square foot lots. And in the event that that were to occur, a development agreement would then govern what a new home would be required to look like. And in the staff report, there is a draft development agreement with some recommended minimum design standards as recommended by staff and as conditioned by the Planning Commission. And you'll see there on the screen that Alan's pulled up, their higher level bullet point minimums. So number one, that any new home be a maximum of 2 stories, so not to exceed 2 stories. Certainly could be 1 story, but not to exceed 2. No stucco, no vinyl siding, and minimum 30% masonry on the front and side facades, which we believe will allow for a future home to match the materials and the standards that are existing in its surrounding neighborhood.
Okay. I know, Council, that you've received emails from citizens on this. Do you guys want to maybe summarize some of the input that you've gotten or raise any concerns that you want to address?
I only got one email from a concerned citizen, and there was one question in this email that I was a little confused by because there is mention that this potentially is a flag lot, and I am not seeing that. So I wanted to just really clarify, will this be a flag lot?
Yeah, Alan, if you just want to scroll up a little bit in that staff report, I did provide just an example of what a future subdivision could look like. And the configuration, there you go right there, the bottom of that page. The configuration of this lot, it's a 1 acre rectangle. It has frontage on 8th East and 2500 North. And so there's no need for a flag lot where it has frontage on a public street. So the minimum would just be that there's 20,000 square feet and it meet the width requirement for the R120 zone, which I believe is 90 feet. So what you see there outlined in blue, I think it's actually 21,000 square feet. I was trying to get a rough approximation of what a subdivision would or could look like. So that would be what a future lot would be. Certainly doesn't meet the definition of a flag lot though.
So it's just 1 lot though, not 2, right?
Correct. If the zone were to be approved, the maximum potential would be to split into 2 20,000 square foot lots.
So the existing home and one additional.
one additional home.
So with the lot with the shed on it, if you were to square up that potential future lot, does that make the lot to the west too small now? Is that
No,
under
so
the 20,000?
the shed there, it could stay, or you could remove it and you could have just equally, sized and configured lots. But if it were to stay, a subdivision would require that shed maintain the minimum side and rear yard setbacks. And so you would have to kind of snake around to the north and the west to create that 20,000 square foot minimum, which is something that could be done just depending on how the applicant wanted to configure their property.
Kenny, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've received some email also, and I think there is a little bit of confusion on the roundabout that's going in at the same intersection and it's at least some people are claiming that this rezone is somehow contingent upon the roundabout, which it's not. But I wonder if maybe you can give some background on that too, Scott.
Yeah, so the city is working to implement a roundabout at the intersection of 2500 North and 8th East. And we've been working with the property owners that abut that intersection for several years now. And working in good faith with each property owner, we've been able to acquire just the corners of the intersection there. And in working with the applicant on this northeast corner, we've identified that we need about 78 square feet of that corner there. So it just clips that corner a little bit. And in working in good faith to preempt any sort of condemnation or eminent domain proceedings, we worked with the applicant, and in negotiating, we as staff and as city staffers, we don't have the authority to grant a rezone or offer a rezone or condition a rezone.
Well,
on
and
the
Scott, if I
acquisition.
can extend that, neither do I as mayor. And I did participate in those negotiations and adamantly, stated that. So just so you guys know, even if that's something that sounded fun, it's just not a legal possibility. So.
Yeah. And we did communicate that to the Planning Commission, that the roundabout project, while it is adjacent to this property, it does not condition the approval of a rezone. So if the Planning Commission had a negative recommendation and City Council were to deny this request, the roundabout project would still move forward. And so there is no condition of approval there. But we did want to work in good faith with the applicant, and we did say, look, we cannot grant you an approval through this mediation process, but as any citizen is able, you can go and request from the Planning Commission and the City Council and see if it has merit. And so that is what the application is for. So it is not a city-led application. It is an owner-led application to the city.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. I think one of the things, maybe Scott, you can clarify on this. This is a lot that was part of a larger subdivision. How long has that zoning been in place?
Yeah, that's a good point. So the subdivision in question is the North Park subdivision. It includes, I believe, 5 or 6 lots there on the east side of 8th East.
So is it those like in a line? That's the subdivision?
Correct, plus 1 lot to the east as well.
Okay.
So Alan's pulling that up here to show that boundary.
I was
That subdivision was recorded in, I believe, 1977. Our zoning for RE1 dates back to around that time period, but most of these early subdivisions existed, and then the zoning was retroactively applied to those areas of town. As best, there's a lot of areas that don't exactly fit the zoning because they were retroactively applied. So 1977 is when these lots were originally created, and they're 1 acre each.
And is that just talk us through as far as procedurally, is that abnormal? Like if I were making a subdivision and I wanted to, after installing the subdivision, carve out 1 lot and say, hey, can you split it in half? Can I do that?
Over time, yes, and that's where zoning reform comes into play. As communities grow, way back when our great-great-grandparents were here in the valley, they started with 40-acre plots. The back 40 is a term that a lot of old timers use. And that's how folks own property, and over time it subdivides based on whatever, the city's requirements are at the time that a request for further development is approved. And over time, as communities grow, zoning changes. With our new general plan, there is an expectation that there is a moderate uptick in our zoning to accommodate for our growth. And so when times change, moderate increases in zoning are approved by the land use authority where it makes sense and where our general plan guides us to do so. And then existing properties that may have been subdivided in the past could request a zone change, and if approved for a zone change, could then further subdivide based on the minimum zoning standards. So in this case, this lot right now is RE1, zoned RE1. It's exactly 1 acre, so it is legally conformed zoning. But in order to further subdivide, a zone change would first have to be approved, and so that's what is being requested is half-acre zoning, which would allow for it to further subdivide into 2 half-acre lots.
Okay.
I know this isn't a requirement, nor should it influence our vote, but do we have any suggestions on what the applicant wants to do with this lot? Is it a sell? Is it a build? Any, no?
All of those
feedback?
options are on the table. I don't know that they have a particular timeline in mind or a particular path forward other than its opportunity for the future.
Scott, I just wanted to get clarification on your last statement. If we decline this rezone, are you saying that this would then put us in, or at least under extra scrutiny with the moderate income housing plan?
No, I mean, any upzone does create new housing choice, right? So it allows for a new home to be built at a smaller acreage than what was there before. So in the world of planning, we always say any housing is better than no housing, because if a home was built here on a half acre, then presumably, a family is moving out of perhaps a smaller housing unit and into a larger one and creating opportunity for the next generation. But in this regard, a half-acre zone is nowhere near attainable or affordable to a moderate income family. And so, no, this would not be something that we could say we've scratched that need for attainable housing.
I mean, that is a shame because I would like to do it, but I guess I see this and I look at exactly what we said we wanted with the general plan, the residential core 2 district. And for me, when we specifically say we want to maintain the lower intensity character while strategically incorporating infill development, I feel like this sort of idea hits that perfectly. I'm ready to make a motion. Is there more discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to know, are there other lots similar to this that we could receive more requests for change of zone?
I mean, potentially, in this immediate vicinity, not necessarily. What's unique about this particular lot is it has dual frontage and it has access from 2 existing public streets. And so, when you look at it from just a bird's eye, it lends itself to infill development pretty easily. There's very little infrastructure that is necessary. It's an underutilized backyard as far as the acreage is concerned. So when the general plan is calling for us to look at opportunities for infill and moderate upticks in density, this I think is a pretty clear example of where maybe that could be achieved.
On that Buxton lot just north, would that preclude or a rezone because of the flag lot problem, or?
Yeah, under our existing language, we
Yep.
say that in existing subdivisions, you cannot create a flag lot.
So that would be ineligible even for
Yeah.
a consideration of an upzone?
We would have to change our language for that to be available to them.
Okay.
So I'll just add some comments because I've gone back and forth on this, especially getting more informed today. For the council, in 7 years, I've watched us struggle with these decisions probably more than anything else. I remember one on 1600 East that fit this criteria exactly and we denied it. Well, I think it was a 3-2 vote. I think the bigger concern I have is if we go down this route, I would expect that we see an influx of requests for this because it shows that this council is willing to now maybe be more negotiable to rezones. I'm not saying that's a bad thing per se. I just think it's an expectation we have to realize. I think we've seen at least, that one on 1600 East and probably 4 or 5 more that fit the criteria with zoning around this area that is R120 versus just RE1. So just something for you to think about, Kenny, especially, as you're new this year. I think just this sets the tone for probably the next couple years would be my
Yeah.
guess on residents that want to make these requests. Again, I have always been a little more on the liberal side of these because I think homeowners, you know, to your point, Emily, strategically now at least we're tying that to the future city plan, which is a good thing. Before it was really a lot of emotion. But, you know, the growth is here, and I think homeowners and their property, especially on these where the surrounding area fits the actual model, it does make sense for those individuals to have some control of their own property. So.
I've been wrestling with this one too, Buzzy. This one is not a straightforward vote in my mind, one way or another. But, you know, while I like the idea of giving property owners the maximum amount of flexibility to do what they want with their property, and this is technically not a spot zone because there is R120 to the south. It is divided from that R120 by a major roadway. So it almost feels a little bit like a spot zone, especially where the zoning or the parcels immediately adjacent to the north and the east are still RE1. But I think what's tipping the scales in my mind right now towards a no on this would be, I like giving people the maximum amount of property rights, but their neighbors have property rights too. And if this adversely affects the neighbors, then I think we need to be very cautious about approving any kind of rezone in that case. And we have heard from neighbors that do feel like it negatively impacts their own property rights.
Yeah, so I guess, Scott, could you speak to why you wouldn't call this a spot zone? Like, I'm curious what the criteria is for that.
Yeah, I mean, a spot zone is kind of like a donut where the donut hole is the spot zone. So if you're in a
So
sea,
truly an island.
an island unto itself, yeah. If you were to actually take this snippet of the zoning map and zoom out even further, you'll see a whole bunch of R112 further to the north. And so there's some unique zoning to this area where these particular homes were built in the 70s, and we have other neighborhoods further to the north that were built in, you know, the late 90s, early 2000s that are certainly a higher intensity there. So you have just to the north, you'll see that orange is all R112, then there's more R120 further to the east there from that cursor. So it would be really tough to call this a spot zone when it's adjacent to two higher intensity zones to the south and to the west. And it doesn't take the true nature of a spot zone. For example, on 1600 East, you'll see that parcel that's zoned residential business. That was a retroactive zoning from an old chicken hatchery that sold eggs on 16. So if we were to take a C of RE1 and add that residential business today, I would say, yeah, that's a pretty clear case of spot zoning. And to be clear, spot zoning, it can be a very bad planning practice, but it also is sometimes desirable because for example, the general plan, sometimes we want to have a small commercial node at an intersection for some small neighborhood market. That would be an island of commercial and a sea of residential. So we have to be careful of the negative connotation to a spot zone where it all depends on the circumstances and the context of the situation. One thing to also clarify, the general plan, it sections out different areas of town based on different residential districts, right? And further up on 1600 East, the overall policy direction for that area of town was to have a lesser favorable language towards upzoning and moderate increases to upzoning. That's where we had tried to focus on preserving some of those farmers' fields and some of those open spaces. This particular property being in the core district 2 has softer language that does allow for some of those infill opportunities and for moderate increases in zoning. Yeah, if you go back down a little bit there, Alan, you'll see what I'm talking about. So to the east, that darker blue is where we wanted to maybe look for some opportunities for some open space preservation and not to have as much favorable language towards upzoning.
So I've only received one email. And so, Kenny, when you speak about harming adjacent neighbors, what kind of issues are you seeing being raised?
Yeah, in the staff report, it talks about there were 2 adjacent neighbors at least that had expressed at the public hearing for the planning commission that they expressed opposition. I can't remember exactly what the verbiage is there, but I can pull that up
I
here
think
real
that
quick.
that's important. Like, I really want those to be articulated other than just a general, opposition to another house. Like, because I want to, I think it's important to talk about property rights.
It just says both neighbors spoke in opposition. Do you have some more details of what their concerns were?
Yeah. Some of the concerns involved, potential spot zoning and recent renovations to properties that there was some concern about, preserving that investment in the property. I think that those are the biggest concerns that I remember hearing. They were, strongly opposed because they were immediately adjacent to the property. And so with understandable, whenever there's change adjacent, there's some concern about inconsistency of what might happen in the future. And to that point, that's part of the reason why the Planning Commission made that condition of approval, that we have some minimum standards for any future home that might be built adjacent to those properties there.
Okay. At the risk of opening this up, I see that we do have some adjacent property owners. Is there anything specific that you'd like to clarify as far as the concerns about construction potentially adjacent? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I think it's important that we don't just have a blanket no new houses kind of thing. I want, if we're going to consider impact on adjacent property owners, I want that to be articulated.
Thank you. And I really appreciate all of you taking the time to really look into this. When we bought the property, we really relied on, this is the feel we wanted. We wanted RE1. That's why we're where we are. By splitting the one right next to us, it really constricts the amount of space that we have, that we've invested a lot of money into where we're at. And we just want to make sure that we're maintaining what we relied on when we purchased the property. And also as we are now investing a substantial amount to renovate our property. So when you have a 45-year-old subdivision, and in your mind, you're like, that'll never change. It is set in stone. And so to have one lot ripped out and then subdivided right next to you is very disheartening.
Okay.
Diana, can I ask you a question? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
You-
Go ahead, Ms.
You're okay to take a question from me?
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter the quality of the home that gets built there, is what I'm hearing. You want it to be open space, right? Is that,
If it's not going to be as it has been, then definitely quality is a factor. We don't want a shed there.
yeah, and
So-
we've been working hard, right, on design standards. That's where I'm trying to, like, we're confident that something that gets built there is going to be good quality because that's what we've spent years finally getting into place. But I'm trying to understand if it's just, I like the open space, and that's okay. I do too, so.
Who wouldn't like
but-
open space? But I think both are important.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, when did you purchase the property that you're talking about renovating?
So my parents built it in 1980. I was in 5th grade. I purchased it in 1996 when my dad passed away.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
There was a comment. Somebody had their hand up here too.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're welcome to.
I'm the property owner, Susan Smart. And I hate to say this. The person who just objected to this, you can't control what happens unless you own the land. Brent Hogan was always an example of that. For a long time, Brian has wanted my backyard, and I rather enjoyed it myself. And I specifically asked him within the last 6 months, what do you want it for? And he said, for the privacy, but I'd like to build a one-story home for my old age. He does not object to the home. Now, I think they've just made their home extra beautiful and a lot of money involved in it. I appreciate that concern. We haven't had much of that privilege of regulating old houses, new houses, but anytime you get new construction, the general rule is it improves the neighborhood. Clavel's subdivision is a good example of that. Those are exquisite homes. So actually, this property was divided at the time of the divorce. And we had bought 10 acres, and he made off with everything except where my house sat on it. And I came back and I bought the pasture land, and I bought that. It's a shop, it's a shed. So you might consider it an investment in my future. Because I re-amortized the house, I refinanced the house, and bought those 2 pieces back that are now a new parcel on the tax rolls. Somehow they let pieces of it go then. He was way ahead of me in this, so I don't know how that occurred. But anyway, you know, we've let the neighbors use it for their horses, their cows, their kids, ponies, what are the puppies, and we've loved it for our use here. I'm at a point where I need to sell the things I won't be able to use again. And I'd like to turn a profit on my investment. I've held it 50 years. And I did the maintenance single-handedly. I hauled those 30-foot pipes when I was 30 years old all day Saturday in the sun. It's not a matter of me not caring for the back of it anymore. We can't find a hired help willing to do it. And maybe we just ushered some out of the country that were willing. But that's just a sidelight, you know. I'd like to take what I'm not using now and put it to its highest use, which would be advantageous to me because I have an unknown future in the world of the elderly and enormous bills. I did tell the other council this high costs $8,000 a month and that one $4,000 a month. Probably for the rest of my life for the privilege of sight. And I'm a very blessed woman. There was not much damage from that. This is incident to living,
Okay, Susan, I'm gonna have you wrap it up if that's okay.
but they're not opposed to a house. And, you know, I don't want to do anyone any malice, but I don't owe anyone anything.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Smart. Okay. So council, further discussion on this, or do we have a motion in either direction?
I think I'll just share these last thoughts. We've put a lot of work into the general. This is not just a simple rezone for so many more reasons than it's historically been. We either are going to commit to the strategies we've decided in the general plan tonight, or we're not. And that's where I'm getting stuck here. There has been years on this. We all approved the general plan 2 weeks ago that allowed for this type of scenario where we do increase growth, where it makes sense, where it's smart, where it's not overburdened on most. So those are the thoughts. And, you know, as I've sat here pondering on all that work over the last couple of years, maybe I'm being overly dramatic, but a no vote tonight puts us back to where we were. And that's okay if that's where we decided we are. But it makes me wonder what we've been doing for the last couple of years on the general plan for the city of North Logan.
Can I provide rebuttal on that,
Please.
Lizzie?
Yep.
I just, the nearest term precedent that I can think of that feels like this one is the gentleman who wanted to rezone that parcel down on Fort East to put the veterinary clinic down there. And this big sticking point that I had with that at that time was like you said, the general plan means something, so does the current zoning map. And so like to change the goalpost, to move the goalposts on the current residents who bought property with the understanding that their surrounding properties were zoned a certain way, sets a precedent I'm not sure I want to set.
Kenny, I think we're forgetting that we actually approved something like this in December of 2023. You were on planning commission. There was the guy who came in who had combined his 2 lots and he wanted to separate his 2 lots. It was in my mind.
That wasn't a rezone though. That was just the subdivision.
You are correct. Sorry, not a rezone. In my mind though, if you asked every other neighbor, to them it felt the exact same as this. And I felt this very similar to that one as I did this one. When you are adding exactly 1 house, this is not going to add 10 houses. The burden to the neighbors, and I get it. I would also want the space. I also acknowledge that if I want the space, then I have to be willing to buy the lot when it comes up for sale.
So
That is my highest priority.
I think the difference though is with that one, it was already zoned such that it could, if the subdivision was approved, it could be, there was always that option to subdivide and then build that extra house. With this one, I feel like we are moving the goalpost because it already is zoned RE1 right now. So the only way that subdivision can happen is with the rezone. So,
So
you know,
I have
literally
a
our goal.
question to interject. When, do we, like, as a policy, and this is, I'm not trying to lead you down any path, but do we as a policy never change a zone? Like, and if there are circumstances where we do change a zone, what's the criteria for that?
yeah.
Because
That's what
I
I
think
wrestle.
like that's a compelling argument to say, look, this is what it's always been and we're going to keep it that way. I don't think that's actually a realistic policy, and I don't think it's the position that we're in as a council. And so it can't be the exclusive basis for making a zoning decision in my mind.
No, I don't disagree. I agree, Mayor. That's why I've been wrestling with this one. Because you're right, there have to be criteria in which a rezone makes sense, but the zoning map still has to mean something. So, you know, if we rezone in all cases, we shouldn't even have, the zoning map shouldn't mean anything to begin with, but it does mean something. And to property owners, it does mean something. So you're right. We don't have well-defined criteria now for when we should or should not consider rezone. So taking on a case-by-case basis. But I guess where this one's unclear to me, I feel like my mind probably errs on the side of keeping on the current zoning map.
Okay. I think we're at a point where we probably need to make a motion, see where the council is on this. So I'll leave that up to you guys to do.
Well, I'll interject. I've lived in 3 different communities and I've watched this very same thing happen. And deepest respect for both parties involved. I understand that we need more housing here. I would want to make sure, I mean, if this was behind and we were really disrupting, it would be a no-brainer for me. This one's a little trickier just because it's right on 2500 North. I would want to make sure that the setbacks and everything stayed similar to what we see along the street, which I'm assuming that's what would happen.
Scott, do you want to weigh on that briefly?
Wouldn't that be part of the subdivision process?
Yeah, so any zone that were to be applied, whether it's a current or a future zone, would be subject to the setback requirements for that particular zone. In our code, it's section 12C1003, the side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks between RE1 are very similar on R120. So R120 setbacks are 25 feet in the front, and RE1 is 30 feet on the front. Everything else is consistent. So very similar setbacks other than the front yard setback at 5 feet.
Okay. Sorry,
That's-
Joni, I just wanted to address that as you brought it up.
No, I think that's great. I'm happier that it would be a half-acre lot and not the 6,000 square foot lots that we had moved right next door to us. So I think at this point, I'd rather see a half-acre lot for you than 6 lots.
Okay. So do we have a motion from council?
I motion that we approve the application of a zoning map amendment to upzone the current zoning classification of parcel ID 07-118-005 at approximately 2510 North 800 East from its current classification of residential estate 1 acre to single-family residential 20,000 square feet.
Okay, that's a motion by Emily. Do I have a second?
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
Oh.
With that, hold on.
The staff report.
I want to do that based on the facts, findings, and conditions contained within the body of the staff report, and I would like to also put in the established framework for minimum aesthetic standards that the Planning Commission recommended. Did I get everything?
That sounds good.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, good job, Emily. So we have a motion by Emily. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Buzzy. Any further discussion on this? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And I'm sorry, Joni, what was yours?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Kenny?
Nay.
Okay, so that motion passes 3-1. I was actually kind of hoping that I'd be a tiebreaker for the first time as mayor. So Joni, that could have been you. I'm not telling. Okay, that motion passes. Thanks for your input tonight. And council, thank you for your thoughtfulness on this. I think that was a really great discussion, and I appreciate your perspective on it. Okay, we'll move on to consider a resolution amending the North Logan City Design Standards Technical Manual. Scott, are you taking this one? Oh, Jordan, all right.
It'll be me. So some of the updates we had to make to the DSTMs are we updated some of our said agreements and bonding agreements in here. We changed the specifications on street lighting to make it so that the street lights would be owned and operated by Rocky Mountain Power instead of North Logan City. Now that Rocky Mountain Power offers LED options, it's a much better idea to go back with Rocky Mountain Power on those. And then we just touched up a couple things as far as like meter installations for new homes, when they can go in and what has to be in place for those. We touched up some curb line depths on roadways and just made some general notes on some of the cross section of roadways. Another one was to adopt manual or Appendix D of the fire code, and some touch-ups to stormwater regulations. So really it's just was going through and identifying some areas that we had missed on the previous DSTM approval, and to clarify some areas where there wasn't quite enough clarification.
Okay, questions for Jordan on this? Okay, then can I get a motion?
Motion to approve amending the North Logan City Design Standards Technical Manual.
Okay, motion by Budsy,
Second.
second by Kenny. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, let's move on to our work session items. Logan City, Sheriff, we appreciate you guys sitting through a long meeting. We have a discussion and presentation from Logan Dispatch regarding a proposed fee increase, so.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with us tonight. My name is Christy Walker. I'm the 911 director. We dispatch for police, fire, and medical for the entire Cache County. And I brought along with me Brian Lowe. He's our systems administrator for the dispatch center. He makes everything work. And I also brought along Chief Jeff Simmons for Logan City Police Department. I'm going to claim Chief Goodrich as well, and the two fire guys in the back. You kind of have a public safety trifecta tonight, so that's a good thing. I'm just going to give you a quick history of the current dispatch agreement that's in place right now. In 2002, it was founded, and it was $2 that was implemented at that time for dispatch services. And there was an additional $1 that was added in 2013, and that was a separate funded radio fee. So there's $3 in total in every utility bill, $2 for the public safety dispatch fee, and then the $1 for the radio fee. And there hasn't been any adjustments since then on either of those fees. A little bit about our dispatch center. If you haven't been there, I'm giving you an open invitation to come on in and take a little tour, sit with a dispatcher for a second and just kind of see what we do. It's kind of fascinating, and they're amazing people, and we do love our job. It's great. We're funded right now for 20 full-time positions, and right now we have 14 full-time employees with 2 in training. So we have 4 full-time positions that are open right this very minute that need to be filled. And we're dealing with some staffing issues because of that. The dispatchers are overworked. We're working 12-hour shifts right now with an additional 6-hour shift after their 312s. One of the reasons that we are short-staffed right now is because of our wages, and we're just not competitive in the wages that we're offering right now. It's hard to get quality candidates when you don't have competitive wages. So as you guys can see on there, Box Elder is $27.50 for starting wage for dispatchers, and Rich County is $26 for starting wage. We are at $22.85. And in November, this past November, we were actually $20.85. and we went down one position. We had 21 full-time positions available, and we went down to 20 full-time positions to just fund an emergency raise for our dispatchers in November to give them a $2 raise and to try to keep some of them from going across the mountain to better wages. And you can't blame them. And it worked, by the way. We were able to hang on to those employees, and it's difficult. So it's a difficult job. It's hard hours. It's hard work. It's hard on families. It's hard on your personal life. It's hard on schedules. And so we're just trying our best to pay them competitively to keep them. One of the things that is an issue is our county is growing. I've listened to kind of some of the issues that you guys are dealing with as well. We have more calls than we have ever had, and we continue to get more calls, but our staffing is the same. In 2013, we had that $39,000 calls dispatched, and in 2024, last year, we had 58,000 calls that were dispatched. So we have the exact same staff, but we have more calls that are coming in, and we're busier. So, and then just to talk a little bit about our fund and our funding, you can see some of the income and the revenue and the expenses on your sheet there. But just to talk a little bit about that, we are an enterprise fund and we pay for ourselves. We support ourselves and we sustain ourselves, and we get our revenue from fees like the ones that are on your utility bill, from your cell phones, and we get paid by agencies that don't have cities that we're not available to charge that fee to. So like UHP, the Highway Patrol, they pay us to dispatch for them. Utah State University pays us to dispatch for them because they don't have their own city to do that. We also have options for grant funding, and we always apply for whatever we can find and get, but those wages or those grant funds can't be used towards wages. So those ones just used for operations and training and those types of things. So our proposal is that we increase this fee that hasn't been increased so the first year, starting in July of 2025, we would increase that by the 10% increase on the $3. So it would be a 30-cent increase for that first year. And then for the following 4 years after that, it would be an increase of 3 cents. So it would end up being a 71-cent increase over a 5-year period of time.
Per month, right?
Per month,
Okay.
yep. Per household, per month, 71 cents, 71-cent increase on that $3. Our primary intention for these funds would be wages and to try to increase our staffing. We have goals as a dispatch center, and one of our main goals is public safety and the safety of our citizens and the safety of our officers. And we have goals to help that be better. And we want more. We have radio frequencies right now that we're not able to use because we can't staff them. And so we're wanting to build that and build our staffing so that we can increase our safety for both our citizens and our responders. So with that, I will open up to questions for myself or Brian or Chief Simmons. If you have any for them as well, we're happy to answer.
You may have touched on this. How is that fee collected?
The $3
Yeah,
through the
is
utility
that
bill. You can
okay,
actually see it. It
utility,
shows
okay.
on every utility bill as a 911 fee.
I
And
couldn't
yeah,
remember. Okay.
for this particular bill or this particular fee anyway.
Curious, we're not putting this to a vote tonight, though, according to the agenda. We're just see, would we support it? It has to come back to a vote, right? Because it's a fee increase.
I don't know if it has to come back to a vote necessarily.
I think this is primarily just kind of a support gathering mission.
Oh.
Because ultimately, and I think this is kind of a gesture of goodwill on behalf, like on Logan's behalf, that they could seek this without any sort of input from the councils, but they're going city to city.
Yes, correct. And the vote would come if it's implemented. Then North Logan City would have to change the master fee schedule for North Logan City that goes out on our utility bills each month. And so that would be a vote that would take place here. However, that would have to take place after Logan City.
So would there be two ways that gets changed, or is this all contingent on each city changing their master fee?
I don't know the answer to that.
Do you know, Chief?
Each city pay the same
Brian?
fee?
Every city pays exactly the same.
Okay,
And it is contingent on every city is going to continue paying the exact same. It's got to be fair throughout the entire
Okay,
county, and
that's
that's our goal. And we're going to every city council. We have been doing that already, and we will continue doing that until we are able to talk with every single one of you.
Well, I for one appreciate you coming, working in the valley. This is a problem I remember when I first moved to Cache Valley in the 90s, everybody made less here because everything was less expensive. We bought our first home for like 105 grand, you know, I mean, it was insane. And well, we've seen this in North Logan. It took us a monumental effort to even get us close with, you know, the way inflation has happened, especially in salaries over the last 10 years. So this is easy for me, very supportive. I can't speak for my colleagues, obviously, but I just appreciate you coming. It's hard because I think you're going to be coming back in a couple of years, to be honest. You know, I don't think we're going to see it slow. And it all comes down to home prices to me, which are just so significant for anybody to live here comfortably right now.
It's true.
$20 an hour is eye-opening to me. You said that's about the average salary
In
right
November,
now.
it was $20. It was $20.85, and we knew that we just couldn't. We had dispatchers that were looking, and why wouldn't they? And so we knew we had to do something, and this was our way. We fund ourselves. We don't get any money from Logan City. Our funding is separate. We have different accounts. It's all completely separate. We fund ourselves. So we are the ones that are going out and looking for the money.
Yeah, my son's making like 1980 doing
Right.
graveyard shifts as a 19-year-old
Yes.
at Casper's. I mean, you'd think we
My
could pay
children make more
this
than
more.
the dispatchers as well, so I understand.
I'll let everybody else speak. Thank you.
So, but I do understand that you guys have built up quite a reserve.
We do.
And so what amount annually do you guys typically put? It's 3 million currently, right?
That's correct.
I'm envious of that because we are nowhere near that in any department that we have. So what portion of the budget annually do you guys put towards that reserve?
Anything that's left over, basically, that automatically goes into our reserve, and then we have interest that builds on that goes
Yeah.
right back into the reserve. So we don't have access. We don't use that. It goes right back in. You can't just lay off dispatchers. So you just can't. We have to have them there. If somebody's not there to answer the phone, the fire trucks don't come. So our goal is we'd like to be able to pay for ourselves for at least a year if we run into any problems, and that would fund the dispatch center for, as you can see on the paper that you were given, it's $2.9 million in expenditures every year, and that would basically pay for us for 1 year to keep going until we figured out what we were going to do. So the reserves are important for us to have.
Yeah, I think my concern is that what kind of catastrophic event would occur where you have an entire year without funding, especially where this is a guaranteed fund.
Yeah,
That's
that's
just,
what I'm
I
saying.
mean, I think it's a good conservative policy, but I do have concerns about that because that seems like for lack of a better word, kind of a luxury to be able to do that we don't have in our city. And so I guess I would love some clarification about, you know, are you guys shooting for an amount? You know, does that fund keep growing? You know, and what happens if you end up having, like, say that you're at 3 million, that covers a year worth of your budget, and you have an excess of 50,000 next year. Do you just keep throwing that into that pot as the interest accrues?
Right now, we're trying to decide what we're going to do for our future. So hanging on to that money is actually really important. And it is important for the taxpayers too, because we're not going to be coming after any money depending on, or that amount of money, depending on what is decided, because this is an all or nothing thing. Either all the cities decide to do this or they don't, or we don't do it. And then what are we going to do? I mean, it comes down to, we have a choice to go to a special service district, and that comes from our property taxes. And I don't think anybody wants to do that, but we would have to rely on our reserves to get us to that point. If we took away this fee that we're getting from the cities right now, which is what would happen if all of the cities don't decide to do this and choose to do this and help us out in this way, that's exactly what's going to have to happen. We're going to have to rely on our reserves to pay those fees.
What
get us through.
are the salaries outside of Cache Valley? Like, what are the competitive?
Box Elder is paying the $27.50. Is that what you're talking about? They're
Yeah.
paying $27.50, and Rich County is paying $26 for their starting.
And are you getting any emotion, like, for support? I'm thinking if you're doing this job all the time, and it would be
Like
mentally,
emotional? Yeah,
emotionally.
absolutely. Yeah.
So do we have those services provided for you as well?
Yes. The city provides an EAP service for us. We also have a peer support team that's part of the Logan City Police Department that's just for public safety. And we have counselors that are available to us that are specifically for public safety that we do use. We very much do use them. So we need them.
So you're right at 20 now? 20 an hour?
No, we have 20 available full-time positions, but we have 14 full-time employees, and 2 of those are in training. So we have 16 full-time employees that we're paying for.
And you're
right
spending the
now.
time and money to get them trained, you want to keep them.
Right.
And those are
absolutely.
all employees of Logan City.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes.
Just some questions. I first off need to thank the staff for
thank
coming out tonight. Thank you for coming out. Thanks to the staff. They've already sat down with a few of us a few weeks ago, and they took the time to do that, to come out and bring these things, and they're answering the questions for you. Similarly, they answered all of our questions. And sitting down and going through it, it's hypocritical for us to go through and just say, oh, you need to save a few dollars on paper clips and pieces of paper here and there. I never want to go over someone else's budget at that level. And when you came out and described it to us, my impression, and I could be wrong, but you guys seem extremely frugal with the funds, and you've illustrated that with the pay that you're paying your employees, the difficulty in staffing. This difficulty in staffing is related to multiple things, and correct me if I'm wrong, but 1, pay, but 2, just an extremely difficult job.
It is hard. We have a
Period.
high turnover. Training is very difficult, and we have a high attrition rate of ones that do not make it. They get halfway through or 8 weeks in, and they realize that they can't do it, or we can see that they can't do what's required of them. So it is difficult, and that's one of the things that we're trying to attract those quality candidates to come in to apply. Ones that are looking to stay, have a career, but most importantly, the ones that we know can do the job. It's hard. It's not for everybody.
And that was the impression that I got, and that's the impression that is overwhelmingly received by each of the cities. And as we look through this, I kind of feel like Buzzy in looking through this, and after we've gone over this, I don't see any errors with what you're requesting, what you're looking at. However, these are questions more from a standpoint of financial policy. So these questions aren't really for you, and they're things that we'll probably just put together in an email that we can send over to Logan City, mainly their finance department, to just get clarification. A lot of cities are coming to us asking us questions, and I'm just like, these aren't questions for us.
You're welcome to do that. You're absolutely welcome to do that, because there are
Yeah.
stuff that we are completely separate from that. So
Yeah.
those Logan City questions would be for Logan City, absolutely.
Exactly. So when I ask these questions, these aren't necessarily for dispatch. These are questions for Logan City. The first one that we already went over is 3 million in surplus. It's always fantastic to have a rainy day fund. I get it. But normally when you're looking at a rainy day fund, you're looking at 10%. So you would look at 200,000 to 300,000 for your budget. That would be what North Logan City would look at. And so looking at that, that's one question I would ask them, and is just to say, when you're looking at this, because there could be a catastrophic event, but that would mean that every single resident throughout the entire county would stop paying their monthly utility bill,
Like
which is
that.
fantastic.
Mhm.
That you have that kind of guaranteed source of funding, which is fantastic. I do really like that. But looking at that, the other thing is, if you have $3 million in surplus, you should be getting at least 150,000 from your PTIF, your Public Treasures Investment Fund, every year. And what we found out from the finance department is you're getting 15,000.
A month.
15,000 a
We got
month?
that for the year.
No, it's 15,000 a month, correct? Yeah.
15,000 a month?
It's
Okay.
15,000 a month that we're getting on that interest.
So that's answered. So the one question though still stands, and that's normally with North Logan City, we'd see a 10%. So you look at 200,000 or 300,000 as your surplus fund. The other questions, we've already gone over this. You guys answer these questions. One, this is a question for HR. North Logan or Logan City used to be with PHP. They jumped ship. They went to Cigna. Cigna then increased your guys' benefits by 29% in 1 year, which is ridiculous. I feel for you guys.
Mhm.
However, that cost is now coming to you guys and affecting your ability to staff fully. And that's then being passed on to the participating entities. Another question for them, not for you,
Sure.
but for them would be, you need to stick with your insurance if you're going to have a 29% increase. Don't jump ship again. This is just simple things that we would look at with Logan City. The other question is coming back to what you guys described, and I think it's fantastic. You've already reached out and you said you'd look into this as well. If you're adding USU, I think you're going to have a disproportionately high number of calls coming from USU, and they should pay accordingly. Their fee should be a little higher. They should have to pay into that, and that's one thing to look into. Similar to what North Logan City is looking into with a disproportionate business license fee, which I think Logan City should look into as well. What it does is it takes people or entities or businesses that have a disproportionately high number of calls, and then they have to pay a fee for their business license and other things associated with that, or a landlord license that's higher, which Logan City already has in place. So it would be a little bit easier for them to implement than us. Looking at this, other questions, I mean, these are simple questions, but they're just related to population growth, meaning you will receive, the only reason I think you've been able to survive without increasing your fees every year is simply because of population growth. You have a higher number of population coming in, so you have a higher number of fees. And that's kept you from having to come and beg every year, probably year after year after year, for more funds to even get by. So thank you for that as well, but that's a question that would come out. The last question, though, is completely not related to you in any way, shape, or form. However, the county just took a transportation tax, and each of the cities has pointed this out, and now it's going straight to public safety with the county, not for you guys, but for the county. But with that, that's something that the cities will probably raise and say, we would rather have that going and a portion of that allocated over to the dispatch center, which benefits everyone. Because North Logan City pays into that fee. The residents of North Logan pay into that property tax and sales tax, which does not come back into benefit to North Logan City residents. And so it's really hard for residents of North Logan to pay into that and not receive a benefit. So those are all the questions we have. The biggest one I still have, though, and we'll probably have to go over with Logan City, not you guys, is the $440,000 that you guys pay to administrative fees.
Yeah, we talked about that last time.
We did talk
Right.
about that, and I reached out to finance department. Thank you to them. They did provide a response as to how it's calculated. They have to do that. I mean, they're good with providing that methodology and the justification for how that's calculated. And they did provide that, and it's based off of a rent or a square footage that you guys use throughout the city. Again, it's just extremely high compared to what North Logan City would pay each of those enterprise funds into an administrative fee. Again, I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, because you guys, again, are being
That's why we're
frugal
here.
with
We're here to
those
have the
funds.
conversations and to educate each other and
Yeah.
to talk about all of the things. So it's absolutely fine.
So I feel bad because,
If the chief, did you want to add anything to any of these things or no? Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I say, please take this with a grain of salt, that you guys are doing fantastic. And I've stated that to all the other cities that have reached out to us as well. You guys are doing a very difficult job, and you're being very frugal with the funds. But we do need to reach out to Logan City and get answers to a lot of these questions that could be a little bit more refined, and it could help them over time to have a little bit more sustainability in those departments, and get you guys a little bit more competitive on those wages so you can attract people to a very difficult job.
Yeah, so Christy, and I think echoing what Buzzy said, we so appreciate the work that you do. And I'm hoping that this can kind of maybe be dialogue that I think it's important that we're kind of upfront about some of the concerns that we're hearing, so that you guys don't. I want to kind of separate the support that we want to put towards you guys and to say, you know, we all are feeling the pressure of being able to hire good people, and even more so for you guys when you're hiring them for a very skilled and difficult job. But I mean, I think it is important that maybe we talk about some of these things. I think that there's a potential for cities to get on board. But I think that it's going to be important that we have these conversations. So
I agree. Well, that's why we're here. So.
Just to talk to one thing about the reserve, the $3 million, because eventually, and Christy touched on this, that eventually the dispatch center isn't going to be with Logan. You know, Logan, we held on to it, I guess. Brian can give you more of a history. We took it over from the county because they didn't want it. They've kind of been orphan children. So at the time, I guess, as Brian describes, we had the technology and the space to do it. So we took it over, not because it was necessarily our purview or what we wanted, but eventually it's going to go out on its own, whether it's a special service district or something else, and it's going to need its own building. It's going to need all these things. And so really that reserve is being built for that day when it comes, because if all we have is a $300,000 reserve, that's not going to get us anywhere toward purchase or equipping a new building, plus all of the ancillary staff that would be needed, HR, IT, all these other things that's going to come into that. So We prefer to let that build, and yes, it is a large, we don't foresee like an earthquake coming through here and suddenly that's all we have to live on. We agree with that, but yeah, at some point, they're gonna have to go it on their own, and they're gonna need a substantial amount of money in order to fund a place to be and all of the things that go with that.
So Chief, on that note, I guess, so in the event that someone, say the county magically suddenly decides to step up, which I think is as likely as an earthquake that's
I can assure you,
decimates everything.
talk to the sheriff, and he has absolutely no interest. So.
Sure. But in this hypothetical, say that they do, would Logan City put that 3 million towards a new facility if someone other than Logan City were taking that on?
That reserve goes with dispatch wherever it goes.
Do we have an assurance of that?
Absolutely. I can promise you that's exactly right. Because as Christy said, that's an enterprise fund. It is its own fund. All of that circulates within that fund. Logan City gets none of it. So when it goes, or if it goes, that fund goes with it.
I guess I'm trying to figure this out relative to like what we experienced with garbage, where when Logan City backed out of that, they retained all of the assets. And so my concern is there any risk of that even
Happening again.
like, and not even trying to assert that Logan would do that maliciously, but I'm just saying like, do we have skin in that game? Like, do we have teeth in that?
In all our discussions, I had never once heard them say anything other than that all goes with them. In fact, I had a discussion with Rich Anderson about this just recently. He's like, that goes with them, and that is the starting point to a new facility or whatever. So, and if you need to confirm that, absolutely call Mayor Daines or whatever, and I'm absolutely certain that's exactly what you'll hear. And if you need that in writing, I'm sure they provide it for you. So, yeah. I don't know much about the garbage thing, but yeah.
Well, and that's not an accusation. I'm just saying, like, especially as a lawyer, like I think of worst case scenario, and what we can actually legally force. So, okay. Council, anything else? Really, again, appreciate you guys
Thank you.
standing up here. I
Thank
know
you,
this
guys.
cannot be your favorite way to spend a Wednesday night, but we really appreciate you and the work that you do.
Appreciate your time as well.
Okay.
So
Thank
Oh
you.
my gosh,
Thank
if
you.
I could pay you guys double, all of you, you're all worth it
Joni,
to me.
that is not binding, so.
That is not binding, but I would eat out 5 or 6 times less
And you
a year
guys are
for
welcome to be excused. You've seen enough, so thank you so much for coming. Okay, let's get updates, or sorry, I'd love to skip the budget, but we're gonna hear it from you guys. Let's start with the budget proposal for water. Tell us good things, Zach.
We can make this really fast. Okay, so as you all know, water is an enterprise fund as well. So we've based the budget on projected revenues for the upcoming year. That's that $2 million roughly that you see at the top. Our operating expenses, basically a cut and paste from the previous year. We're not expecting a huge bump in revenue, especially with, there may be population growth, but we're pushing water restrictions. So we're going to be balancing that revenue pretty regularly from year to year. Alan, if you'll scroll down. We did put in a 5% wages increase. That's going to be the biggest jump you'll see. That's due to many of our staff getting certifications and merit-based raises that could be coming this next year. We kind of push everyone to keep up on that education and get better. So they've earned it. From there, basic operating, we are going to fund our capital savings line. If Ellen will scroll down.
How far do you
A
want to
little
go down?
more. Right there. We are going to still put away $262,000 worth of money to use towards capital. With that, it basically balanced from revenue to expenses with a 1%.
When are we gonna hit 3 million in reserves? Too soon?
Well, when we go over this updates on the, it's going to take a while.
So my children's grandchildren might see it. Okay, cool.
Because we're spending a little of that this year.
Good night.
But as far as our operating expense budget goes for this year, that's what we've got. Any questions? Sorry for our it's good. I like them.
It's
Just really
consistent in
want to
other
thank you for,
meetings, just so you know.
I just really want to thank you for all you've been doing to help be more efficient with our water usage. I like everything that we've been working on to try to make things better. So thank you.
Yeah, as
This
much
is-
as everyone dislikes water restrictions,
They work.
they're not because we're just trying to save the environment. It's to balance the money, the operations of the system, pressures,
Mhm.
fairness to everyone. So
I'd be curious if you really do get a lot of complaints. I actually hear the opposite, especially over the last couple of years.
That's
a lot of like,
surprising.
thanks for getting this out under control, North Logan City. And
that's good to hear.
The most
Glad.
complaints that I hear are people who are frustrated by the days that they're allowed to water
Yeah,
versus
that's
not water. But I would say that that is a very small portion.
And we, just so you know, on that point, we're flexible. If they call us, we'll usually let them change.
also, I can't.
That's not legally binding.
Oh, you don't get fined,
Oh.
Mayor?
but you get,
So example,
if your
this one
schedule
was
needs to change.
a resident who was one of my neighbors came and was like, I really like to water on Monday and Thursday. And I was like, then go ahead. Like, like it's like that kind of thing where they're still doing the 2 days. They just wanted to do it
Yeah,
slightly
they're
different.
following the things, but we're happy to make concessions on that.
I do have a quick budget question.
Yeah.
I thought we got some grants for some of the infrastructure that we're currently we're going out for bid on, but I don't see grants represented.
Yeah, so we did get $400,000 grant for our design work. I don't know. Did we put it in, Jordan?
If you go at the very top at 706, we haven't got that money yet, and as we spend it is when we receive it. So it's we can put a placeholder in for that, but
That's all right.
we don't know exactly the timeline yet. It could be a year before we get it. We're working with BOR to get an answer on that because it could be that we front that money and then they reimburse us for it after. So it could take us a year up to spend that, or it could be upfront. So we're still waiting to hear back on that.
So
Okay.
and then we're currently working on a bunch more grants and federal money to come in.
So that's a very good point, Kenny, and thanks for bringing that up, and thanks, Jordan, for that response. Yes, I had the similar questions, but it's based off of when we actually receive those. We've been given confirmation, but we haven't received the funds yet, meaning they're there, but, so you receive the 400,000, we have the $9 million bond, so that will have to go, we'll have to detail that throughout this entire budget. It'll have a few lines associated with it. Not just one line coming in and out. It has several lines that track every aspect of that bond. It's kind of a pain. So thanks to Scott for going through that, Scott Bennett, that sets up that bond. And then you'll have another probably grant coming in that we're hopeful we receive. That's around $2 million. Again, when we receive that, we'll reflect that in the budget. And because Kenny requires me to put together a budget revision detail, it's a little easier to notice when we put those things into the budget, but we'll keep you up to date on those items.
So did you say you have a separate line item? I see state grants on line 13. Is there a separate line item for federal grants?
Yes, we'll have to probably create a few lines that go through there.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Zach. I appreciate it. Anything else from council? Okay. All right, let's move on to sewer.
Sewer?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Good one, Zach. Zach's like, hold on, got to give you a second.
Sewer is even easier than water. Basing it based on the same revenue scheme, a slight increase, but not too much. Since all of our staff's wages are split between water and sewer, you'll see an increase in the staff wages line there, reflecting a minimal percentage. Less gets taken out of sewer for everybody. It's like a 70-30 split usually. The rest of the operating expenses, you'll see a decrease from fiscal year 25 to fiscal year 26. We're gonna probably save about $100,000 in contracted expenses. We're gonna do those in-house this year. And by doing that, we end up balancing this budget while still putting some money away in capital. Not as much, but about 60 grand for equipment and vehicles.
60 grand is the capital fund. So how much less is that than 3 million?
About the same.
Man, why did you let them go if you're going to make all these great jabs?
She wasn't going to do it until he walked away and came back. She couldn't.
Yeah, this is a new man.
It's
It's a
different
new man.
person.
Uh-huh.
So, Any questions on sewer?
Thank you for taking
Yeah,
care of our
great job.
sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sewer's easy.
All right. Can we get someone else for streets?
Zach has to stay till the end of the meeting, right?
Yeah, Zach has to stay because we're going to be doing updates on North Logan's water capital improvement plans. And obviously Jordan wants to pass it over.
All right, so I'll take care of streets, I guess. So our expected revenues, several lines are staying about the same. The biggest anticipations we see are with our COG funds. There's that 500,000 there. And then our Class C road funds as well, that's increasing quite a bit. As well as our encroachment permits. So that's, the jump in encroachment permits is largely due to the Google Fiber going through. So that's.
And
not
that's
something
going to
we see
be
all-
annual, right?
Oh,
like-
I wish.
No?
No, it's a one-time thing.
Oh, that's just the permits. But then isn't there franchise? Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Do you have that with Xfinity too?
No.
Just a different.
Yes.
Okay, so.
So that's the expected revenues for us. I don't know if you'll scroll down a little bit. As far as our expenses, several things are staying relatively the same. We've become a little more fuel efficient, so that has decreased a bit. Let's see, up, a little bit up. Right there. Okay, our utility street lights, as Jordan went over earlier, we're working with Rocky Mountain Power to switch a lot of that stuff out to LEDs. That's going to increase our budget at the time being, but then it's going to drop it drastically in the future for what we're paying in lighting. If you'll scroll down a little more.
What are you thinking, like next year, that number would be?
Jordan, do you know?
Yeah, so it takes us from, so currently we pay roughly $1,900 a month for our street lighting throughout the city. And after Rocky Mountain Power converts everything, oh, he's got it in a note.
I'm
but it will
sorry,
cut
should
that
just
down.
looked at the screen.
Yeah, so
I
it'll
was
cut
like-
that down to about 900 a month. So we'll save about 12,000 a year. And so that will, yeah, it'll return on investment in like 3.66 years is what they calculate it.
Reduces bill by 70%, yes.
Yeah.
Way to go.
You'll scroll down just a touch more right there with our road surface treatments. That's our biggest expense by far. We've been able to decrease that, just being aggressive recent years. We are getting ahead of things. Our roads are in much better condition, so we can finally start seeing the benefits of that. Big projects there, we're chip sealing our industrial park, so west of the highway. And then we do have another friction seal. That's a treatment we've done the past couple years. I think it looks pretty clean. It's a nice treatment. Hopefully you guys have noticed that. We'll be treating the Mahogany Ridge development as well as 2100 North with that. And then we are trying a new treatment. It's a hybrid treatment. It's basically a chip seal with just a smaller aggregate. That's going to be going down at the top section of 2500 North, just to the east of 1250 East. And then we'll also be doing a section along 200 East, kind of down by the Thomas Edison School. Scroll down a bit more. Let's see our COG expenses. So that's going to reflect our revenues up top. So that is going into our road projects such as 200 East and 600 East.
And they have to use some of those roads, right? Those are what were submitted. For
Yes.
funds.
Yep. Yep. So that's the bulk of our expenses. I don't know if you'll scroll down a touch more. You can see on our bottom line, we're having a big reduction in our budget, but our expenses are higher. And I think it's important to note that while that is such a big decrease, almost 50%, that's the demand on the budget. We're still spending much, much more, but it's due to those COG funds and the Class C road funds. So future note, if that jumps, this is all work that we've covered with our general fund money. So that's a reflection of that. With that, does anybody have any questions?
Thanks for all you do, and really pass along our thanks for snowplows too. You guys have done a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you think we'll have the plows out one more
Alan?
time? Maybe Friday, did you see that? Ready for spring.
And just to point this out, what Colby went over, thank you, Colby. This is more of just the general budget trends that I'll prepare for kind of the last meeting. But this is why it's really hard to just look at an expense. If you look at expense across the board, Colby's budget has increased from last year. If you look at demand on general fund being down 50% is ridiculous. I mean, he's
That is
literally
huge.
demanding much less on the general fund. But that's why we'll put together the demand trend line. What is the demand on the general fund coming out of each of these budgets?
So Alan, I agree with you. I like I like breaking that out. Are we able to scale back down, assuming maybe those grants aren't always available and our choices are either a greater demand on the general fund or scaling back down? Are we able to scale to kind of flex with the grant availability?
Yes, those are usually, those don't affect our surface treatment. Surface treatments come out of the general fund no matter what. These are for paying for large projects.
Yeah.
And
So
like
basically,
Colby's-
we
just
don't
won't do
do, if
'em.
we don't get COG
We
funding,
just
we
don't
don't
do
We
do
just
it.
don't do them.
Yeah.
And that Colby's strategy about going through, like I mentioned years ago, but the amount of road replacement, complete replacement, I used to report on that to city council, and it was 10 to 15 roads every year that we have to completely replace. And now it's down to, I don't know of any that we have to completely replace besides like Naomi Drive up on the bench. The rest of the roads throughout the city, because of Colby's strategy on surface treatments, has brought us to the point where we don't have to do those complete replacements. So yeah, that's how that would fluctuate at that point.
But we'll continue to ask COG. We ultimately didn't get funded for our roundabout on 12th and 31 this year, so we just aren't doing it.
Yeah.
We'll probably resubmit for that, and then same with 200 East, we got partially funded for that. So we just don't undertake the the projects if we don't have the funding.
And is it always COG funds or do we get state and federal grants also for some of these?
All three.
Okay.
We receive.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Who do we have for stormwater? All right. A new face.
All right, yeah, I'm Ryan. I'm over the stormwater. And so stormwater is enterprise fund. Most of our revenue comes from subdivision inspection fees, stormwater fees, and SWIP fees. The stormwater inspection fees, we've bumped up a little bit just with anticipation of all of the subdivisions that are going to be coming in within the next little bit. We get a portion of that for those inspections, and so that's why it's higher than what has come the previous year. Most of it is staying pretty consistent down to line 482, the infrastructure for stormwater. We have a few projects planned that are needed. The biggest one I would say is up on Naomi Drive. Every time it rains or we have snow melt or anything like that, the homeowner on the corner there, his driveway fills up. And so we have it planned to put in several collection boxes there and then pipe it under the road into the drainage across the road. So we are guesstimating for that one roughly 25,000, and then we have an injection well that we need to put in on Deer Haven Drive. There was a injection well that was there previously, but to access it, to clean it and maintain it, we can no longer access it. It was on the property and they put concrete over it. And so what we'll do is we'll dig one in the cul-de-sac in the road, so it's always in our right away. We can always access it and stay on top of it. We've done that in a few other areas previously and it's worked awesome. So and then we have a little bit budgeted there just for any other infrastructure, any problems that come up. There's always little things here and there that pops up. So that's our biggest expense for stormwater. The rest are pretty standard. And yeah, any
Okay.
questions?
Questions from council? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on. We
One
have
thing to
heard,
point out to say
Oh.
hats off to Ryan for doing this. Does everyone know where Naomi Drive is when we keep talking about
I
this?
do.
Yeah.
Does everyone know the history on Naomi Drive?
Oh, yeah. The
Yeah.
washout
It's
down
the
at
one that
Sodom.
like, how is it even a road? Every time I look at it.
Call it Naomi. Well, I won't say it.
Okay, Buzzy, keep it appropriate. But at the same time,
Yeah, only the mayor can
this
make
isn't
bad jokes.
something that Ryan like caused and now he's correcting. This is something that went in 2004 as a private lane, 2003, and then the city inherited the road. Literally as a private lane, not built to any spec whatsoever. And so literally since the time that it got turned over to the city in the late 2000, like 2006, 7 or 8 is when it got turned over to the city, about 6 or 7. It's just been a difficult process ever since adjusting that. So the streets and stormwater department have gone through and they've done corrections on that about every other year, every 2 years since I've been with the city. And so this one will at least provide a more substantial correction for the stormwater issues on that substandard road that's turned over to the city. And just to plug to the city council, they haven't done this since 2006, but never accept a private road into the city, or you'll end up with these types of concerns.
I feel like we've had requests.
What was the rationale for accepting it at that time?
Oh, Kenny.
Yeah, I don't want to open it. Is that a big can of worms?
Oh, Kenny.
Strike it from the record. I
You're like,
guess.
just kidding, I don't want to know.
No comment on the record.
Yeah, we'll chat later. Okay. Let's go to general plan, master plan updates. Is that you, Scott?
Yeah, just one quick update. So as you remember, we did approve conditionally those documents a couple weeks ago, and I just received an email during this meeting that those documents have been updated with that owner occupancy language. So I'll be circulating that back over to the council. One last quick thumbs up. Make sure we got that language added as was conditioned. But other than that, once those have been reviewed by council, then we'll move into just making sure that they're formatted in print form so we can get them published and put on the website. So we're at the finish line.
Procedurally, are we just doing that approval via email?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, questions? Okay, we'll move on to capital improvement projects. Oh, it's Zach again.
Hat trick for Zach.
Yep, you did that. You got it once.
So right now with the capital improvement plans, we have the water treatment plant upgrade contact basin. They will be mobilizing April 1st. You should start seeing materials delivered up Green Canyon starting Monday. That will be completed. They estimate August 1st, so our plant will be back online hopefully within 2 weeks of that completing. The 4 million gallon tank up in the East Bench, that is currently out to bid. We're waiting so we staggered comments back from the Division of Drinking Water with the bid cycle. So comments back from Division of Drinking Water will be next Friday, and then 2 weeks after that, the bids will be in. So we'll then go through the selection process for that. That tank project also has 2 or 3 separate pieces to it. One is the transmission line to service the East Bench. That's part of that bid pack as a separate number. But if we can get the same contractor, we will. If we got to go 2 different contractors, they need to coordinate the timings. So those will come back together. The new well, right now we're doing an investigative study on our aquifer in Green Canyon, seeing how much more water we have up there, and then mapping the rest of the city to see where we can get substantial water from the ground. Right now, we're not sure where that's going to go, but we have some decent ideas where it would make sense both just in the scheme of the city and for conveying water. And then from that, we're just hoping to get started with the summer. Everything should start rolling here soon.
Sounds great. Great news. Thank you, Zach. Okay, let's get updates on the Civic Center.
Zach's going to come up and do that, right?
I could probably do it better than I can, let's be honest. But really, it's just, you've seen the decking for the roof, everything being installed around the community center. And now they'll start, after those roofs come in, working on the interior portions of the building, which is exciting. The biggest updates, though, are related to kind of the donation brochure, which I said is in the works. It's probably about 95% complete, and it's just going to come in 3 formats. One will go in the newsletter. One will be an individual brochure that will sit down with people that would like to donate to the city. And then the other one will go out in kind of social media and on the website. Right now, we're trying to figure out the best methods for receiving payments, considering the fact that several people would like to donate either small or large amounts, but how they like to donate. We don't have people that like to donate in front of people. So how do you do that in more of a confidential manner so we have more people donating to the community center? Obviously, a lot of people will be recognized in a small way, just on a wall where they'll have a donation wall with birds and leaves that have represented people on those. But the same token, it's just receiving those funds, and that was what we were coordinating today. So that's just the update on the community center.
Okay, thanks, Alan. All right, let's get updates from officers. Jordan, anything else? Scott?
Just if you're going to the league in April and you haven't registered, please register and then get me the bill so we can send it off.
I haven't ignored that, Scott. I'm just trying to still clear my calendar to make that possible. I would like to.
We have until.
Yeah? Okay.
You know I'm going.
I think it's March 15th where the fee goes up.
You guys can go.
What day was that?
I think it's March 15th.
Boo.
Goes up $70.
You can't boo that, Mayor.
I'm going.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, did you email us like yes, we just go on and fill that out.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
In your email, there's a link.
okay.
Mayor, you're planning to go then?
Yeah.
Buzzy, you and I will talk. Joni, are you heading out to that?
I'm not missing that. Yeah.
Okay. Emily?
Oh, gosh, I wish. No, unfortunately, I'm having to head out of town somewhere else, so I won't be there.
Okay. Didn't tell anyone this, but you guys are going to be teaching my USU class at that point. Anyone who stays behind.
Oh.
So Kenny or Emily.
Yeah, I
just
guess I'll
that's
be
your
coming to
Are they
this.
okay if I teach it?
Okay. All right. Maybe nudge us again, Scott. Okay. Alan.
Just really quick, you can see the upcoming events. This isn't all of them because we've got events at both the library and the rec coming up, but obviously Basketball Skills Challenge, Health and Wellness Fair, those are the 8th and the 15th. But the one I really need you to pay attention to is March 19th. That is the Employee Appreciation Lunch at the HSC. So just the upstairs of the HSC. So make sure that you guys all make it to that. You're all invited. Should be a good time. And then the Easter egg hunt on April 12th, along with the soapbox derby. And that's the one put together by ASME. That's the mechanical engineering group out of USU. They do a fantastic job. It's really exciting. And then the league, making sure that each of you, if you can, attend that league conference. That'll be great. And then just one other item on the mayor's message. Who has it for April? It is none other than Councilman Mollikel.
Oh my gosh, 2 months in a row, that's not me. How did that happen?
For
Soon.
you, probably the 15th.
But yeah, I think sooner the better because we're shifting a bunch, right? For the newsletter. Okay. All right. Anything from the council?
No.
Okay. All right, then I'd entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Okay, motion by Emily, second by Buzzy, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. No one opposed.
No, I was actually.